video. Today we are looking at Cambridge Music IGCSE past paper regarding Section B extracts. So of course Section B has to do with world music. It as a whole counts 22 marks. There will be a B1, which will be a listening extract of one of the general world music listenings, and it will be 6 marks. Section B2, same thing, different world music listening, but 6 marks as well. And then you will get your world focus, which is in Section B3. That will count 10 marks. But today we are focusing on the general world listening, and we are zooming in on Africa, my favorite continent. So we are going to listen to an African music example today. This extract comes from the June 2020 paper 1-1 example. And we're just going to dive right in and listen to the extract.
Now listen to music B2 and answer the questions.
There we go. So let's take a look at our questions. This is music B2. So this would have been the second extract in Section B. So remember, the Cambridge listening paper is a full-on systematic listening paper. The examiner in your Cambridge venue will play a CD from start to end, and you have to answer questions systematically. You can't skip, hop, jump, or do anything like that between questions, because it is according to what you listen as the CD plays. So there would have been a big section A with 2 sub-extracts. Now it's big section B with 3 sub-extracts, of which this is the second. So we are listening to B2, and you will hear the extract 4 times. I would recommend on the first playing, just get used to it, just relax into the playing, try to decipher, okay, which world music am I listening to, which area's music is coming up here. Maybe I can do a little elimination game, like, okay, it's not Chinese music, it's not Japanese music, it's not Latin American music, in order to find out what it is. But most likely by the first playing you would have an inkling towards what you think it is, and then you would use the next few playings to zoom in on the questions that they ask you. For instance, if they say, how does this affect that? Or what type of voice do you hear? What type of instrument do you hear? Then on the second playing you would zoom into that. Third playing maybe a little something different. Fourth playing, tie everything up, and you do get a space between each playing to answer the questions and answer what you do have ready so far. So there will be a playing 1, a nice silence in which you can answer your questions or write down anything you want to. There will be a playing 2, a silence, a playing 3, a silence, and then a playing 4. So let us look into our questions. We do get an opportunity to read our questions through in another moment of silence, just before playing 1. But here, let us read through the questions. They say, describe the music of the instrumental introduction, and they do clarify that for us. They say before the voices enter. So how would you describe the music before the voices enter in this extract? Then they ask, where does the music come from? And of course we have dealings with African music now, but that is not the reason why it's that. We have to obviously listen and know what's going on. And of course, when we hear a certain type of instrument, or if we hear a certain type of technique, like especially in this extract, you already hear call and response type singing. You already know, okay, Africa, that is where we're at. And the last question they do ask of us is, how is the music sung by the voices typical of music from this area? So there you're going to have to just elaborate a little bit more, give some nice reasoning. But let's go ahead and listen to the extract once more, and then we will take a deep dive into our questions.
Music B2, second playing.
Great, so let's step in to answering our questions. First things first, we are asked to describe and explain what is going on in the musical introduction. So this is before any vocals come in, and definitely we can hear there's a lot of percussive instruments there, so you can definitely write down that the introduction is played by percussion instruments. They definitely do enter one by one, so they're definitely staggered in that way, and you can for sure say that. And then of course there is a repetitive cycle going on here. African music is very cyclic. They have repetitive rhythms here. It's creating a polyrhythm, but not just that, there's definitely, here comes the technical work, an ostinato pattern. So a repeated rhythmic pattern here, and any of those three will give you your 3 marks. So remember to look at the amount of marks in brackets. That will give you an indication of how many facts or how many things you need to say in order to get your full marks there. And Cambridge does accept a few other answers. If it has to do with something logical that you're hearing within the musical introduction, they will definitely award you marks. For instance, if you say that you specifically hear the shakers, you specifically hear the djembe later on, you specifically hear the balafon, then you will get your marks there. Next, where does this music come from? Of course it comes from Africa. And then you would have to sort of, in a nutshell, in a little bit of an undercover way, say why, because they do say, how is the music sung by the voices here typical of music from this area? So you sort of have to describe in a weird way why this is African, like why you're saying in 14A this is Africa. So 14B is very much linked to 14A, but they're not directly asking you, why are you saying this? Give a reason for your answer. But in an undercover way, that is what they're doing. Indirectly, they're asking you that. They just ask it in a sneaky way, sort of, how is the music now sung by the voices? How is this typically African? And why do you say this is African? So let's go ahead and answer that question. So you'll remember a little bit earlier on I did speak about call and response. So for sure that is something that you can say. You can either say it's call and response, or a solo singer calls out and then the music is repeated by a group of singers, and also at times, the group of singers and the soloist will then repeat what the soloist just sang at the same time afterwards. If you want to describe it like that in your own words, definitely go ahead, but call and response will be the technical terminology there. They do give us the bracketed mark of 2, which means we at least need to say 2 things. So call and response, although there's an and in there, it technically is only worth 1 mark. So you would have to say something else. And something that's very typical within African music is definitely parallel harmonies. The easiest thing there is to say that the response in the call and response is in parallel harmony. So there we go, all love for Africa and African music. And of course there are various types of African music, and you get your sub-Saharan, you get your Western Africa, you get your Northern Africa sounds, which borderline Arabic sounds as well, and then you get your Southern African sounds. And for sure there is a blend and sometimes an overlap of these sounds, but let's for sure recognize Africa as unique in all all of its country sounds. We have 54 countries on this beautiful continent, and each has a unique sound within their music. Now, of course, Cambridge wants us just to identify Africa as a broad sound. But if you do have time to go and listen to more sub-focused genres of African music, please do so. It's quite amazing and incredible to see what type of sounds come out of our continent. So I hope this does help you. Good luck with identifying African music in Cambridge IGCSE Music.